Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of the Upstream podcast. I am your host, Raphael Correa, and I am joined here today by the CEO of Great Outdoor Cottages, a great friend and colleague, Matt Kraeuter. Hey, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you adjusting your schedule and tricking my assistant into thinking that you thought this was next week.
It was payback from something in the past that we won't relive. But
okay,
she's great. And
she deserved it. Is what we're saying.
No, I didn't go that far. Of course.
No, I get it. We like to have fun here. So, for those of you that don't know, Great Outdoor Cottages is the sister company to Blue Water. So Blue Water, we've been in the space now owning and managing campgrounds for better part of 15 plus years now. And so not too many years back, I would say probably 5 years back, we got the opportunity to jump into the park model building game and had a lot of great success coming out of the gate with that. We were one of the biggest customers, obviously, but we knew that we weren't going to be the only and ever customer. And so what we wanted to do was find a leader that was going to really take Great Outdoor Cottages to the next level. We were very fortunate to find Matt here in our backyard. And I can say from my personal experience that it's not only been a tremendous professional relationship, but I now regard you as one of my close personal friends, and it's been really fun getting to know you. And so thank you for making the time to be here and talk about GOC and you and everything else.
I'm happy to do it, Raf, and as long as there's a meal afterward, then I'm happy to accommodate at any time. Raf is the, he'll find all the good places to eat. Unfortunately, we know where they all are in Ocean City.
We do, but yes, I am no stranger to a good meal.
Especially chicken parm.
Yes, we had some great chicken parm out there in Phoenix. So, Matt, to kind of get us kicked off here is why don't you give a little background, right? I like how you always introduce yourself as a recovering attorney.
Sure. Well, it goes back a little farther than that, I guess.
Yeah, please.
I'll kind of give you a little background. I have a little bit of a varied background. And undergraduate, I studied physics and then business, which a lot of people thought was a little bit odd. And then I took a couple years and traveled around the East Coast and worked in different big cities in New York and Philly and Miami and bounced around. And then when I was about 25, I made the decision to go to law school. My wife, she was then my fiance at the time, was working full-time in D.C., and I made the decision I was going to go to law school, and I went to law school and in Baltimore. Went from Baltimore and had a great career at a large law firm. And, you said right in your backyard, but it wasn't always here, right? I'm not a local, right? And I know, as you probably know, in Ocean City, you're not a local until you're about two generations deep into the Ocean City ether. But I moved down in 2015 as a result of working for a client of mine that's located down here on the Eastern Shore. And he asked me to be his general counsel, a large manufacturing company. I didn't know much about manufacturing. I knew a lot about federal procurement and other things, but I worked with him for many years. And much to his chagrin, about 3 years ago, he made the introduction to yourself and Todd and said, hey, we've got this company. It seems like there's a lot of good potential there. And, you kind of had that backlog and had built it through this COVID boom. And we can talk a little bit about that later in terms of what drove that park model boom that I've subsequently learned about. And he said, maybe this is the right guy to be the CEO. And, as probably a little bit of hesitation on your side and Todd's part as well, that why would a lawyer be the right person for this, right? And I think that because of my background coming from sales originally before law school, and being a lawyer has I'll call it a sales aspect and leadership aspect to it, to being a partner at a law firm, working with a large team and being able to lead that team, it seemed to make a lot of sense, that we could figure it out.
Definitely.
And GOC was kind of interesting because the manufacturing piece was there. Right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of experienced staff there with, between them hundreds of years of experience building.
We knew how to build them.
That's right. Building them was the easy part.
Yeah.
It was how are we going to drive this business forward into the mid-2020s and to beyond, right? And that was really what you had tasked me with, was said, hey, how are we going to do this? And that's what led me there.
Yeah, as many of the best decisions that Blue Water have ever made, it's been over a couple Miller Lights.
It happens at Harborside.
Yeah, that's right. Matt, before we kind of jump into park models and manufacturing and all that, one of the most fascinating stories that you've shared with me is your time in sales, right?
Sure.
And grinding it out in the sales world. Can you tell us a little bit more about that history and that experience and what you took away from it?
Sure. So going back a little bit to my undergraduate experience, I spent 4 years studying physics and then came to the realization that working in an optics lab in the basement was not my future, right? So I pivoted and got a business degree. And after my business degree, I was like, well, what am I going to do? And my brother actually hired me as a sales guy up in northern Jersey. And my very first job, I didn't have a computer on my desk. I didn't have anything on my desk except a phone book and a phone. And he said, start making calls. And he said, I'm going to give you a little piece of advice. And I said, what's that? And he said, take a piece of paper out and write smile and dial on it. And he said, you have to project an air of confidence and enjoyment in what you're doing. You know, a lot of people that do that job, which is difficult, and
it's a
God
grind.
bless anybody that does it. It's a grind, right? You've got to do it with a smile on your face, and you've got to enjoy it. And that was my first job out of college, and I was there to set appointments for other people. And, then I went to, I've knocked on doors in Manhattan. I've snuck into office buildings, trying to find appointments and other things. And that was a great career, and it really was, and I enjoyed it a lot. We were selling voice over IP telephone systems, which in the late 90s was all the boom, right?
Yeah.
You can make a telephone call over the internet.
Yeah.
Now, the way in which you make a telephone call is completely different than the operator making, plugging in lines into a switchboard. But it was good. It taught me a lot about how to understand what people's challenges were, and if you had the right solution for them. And one of the important things to understand was when you didn't, right? You had to understand what your limitations were, and it's a lot of the challenges that salespeople have when you talk to salespeople and production people. Is they're like, well, the sales guys promised all this great stuff, and the production people say, well, we really can't do that, right?
Yeah.
And understanding that there's a balance there, and I think that rounded out my experience to say, look, we want to sell things and provide solutions, but there's limitations as well.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the world that we live in the problem is bounded, and how do we operate within those bounds to try to address those solutions? And it was hard, and it's demoralizing at times.
Yeah. It builds a tough skin.
It sure does.
Does. I'm hearing that's where you learn to be a great listener. That's where you learn to be a creative problem solver.
Sure.
And you got a little bit of toughness on the rejection side, right? And I think that's, quite frankly, any entrepreneur will tell you, it's the no's that made them, not the yeses.
That's 100% right.
Yeah. No, that's great.
I tell everybody, just to interject briefly.
Yeah, please.
On a personal note, I gauge my my sales skills on my wife. My wife is one of the most beautiful people I know, and is one of the most wonderful people I know. And I don't think I deserve her, but I really tried hard. And so I was like, well, hey, I was able to do that.
Yeah.
And
if I can do this, I can do anything.
Right. That's right. And so, it was, that was kind of one of the things that I tell everybody is that, of all the things I could do, I could get that done.
Yeah.
So we can solve a lot of problems.
Everything's possible.
That's right. That's right.
No, that's a great perspective.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit and give the listeners some background on Great Outdoor Cottages.
Sure.
Kind of where are you guys based? What are you guys building? What's the capacity? Talk to me about what we build and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. So I'll give a little bit of an origin story. I think you alluded to it earlier that, the company was built out of this boom that happened past COVID, right? Briefly past COVID, because RVing was one of those kind of industries that blew up early after COVID because it was outdoor, right? You could stay in your COVID bubble, right? And so there was a lot of appeal to the RV industry and to camping as a whole. But there was a hole in that industry, and that hole was there was a huge demographic of people that don't want to sleep on the ground in a tent, that don't own an RV, and don't particularly want to, but they want to have that kind of camping experience. And so the park models really kind of filled that hole. And there was a really this confluence of events that happened post-COVID. And the one was there was a huge demand driver, right? There was a lot of people in outdoor hospitality.
Yeah, they wanted to get outside.
100%.
They didn't want to go overseas. They didn't want to be cooped up on a cruise ship. Like, this was the one good option.
And even hotels.
Yeah.
People were reticent about going to because,
Yep.
I remember my parents used to go and they had tape on the door saying this has been sanitized,
Yeah,
right? Which
yeah.
is just an odd experience in a hotel.
Not a great welcoming vibe.
That's right. And so there was this big demand driver, but then there was a lot of economic drivers as well. And one of them was a tax incentive. Mm-hmm. There was a huge tax incentive for park models because a park model, while it looks like a small home, is technically an RV,
Yep.
and under the IRS tax code is equipment, and was at the time able to be bonus depreciated, which I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that, but it allowed people to expense them out. The second thing was there was a huge, the average daily rate and the demand was super high for these. Mm-hmm. And the third was there was really low interest rates. Money was really cheap at the time, right?
Yep.
So campground owners were looking at it saying, gosh, I can buy this park model for $80,000, right? And I can generate $40,000 of revenue or $45,000 or even $50,000. I know in a couple of your premium resorts you're receiving more. And they were able to do it and write off the entire thing to offset expenses, right? Or to offset profit, I'm sorry.
Yep.
And they were able to borrow money really cheaply at the time to do it.
2-3%.
100%, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that drove this demand for park models, which I think, and I don't want to speak for you, but I think led to Blue Water saying, look, let's look at setting up this factory to try to satisfy our own demand, because you saw that. You guys have done the math. You did the market analytics to say, look, the demand's there. It makes sense. Let's do it. And that's what created Great Outdoor Cottages.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, that might not be the right word, but in 2023, the world changed a bit, right? Market, the interest rates started to go up. The tax incentives actually were in a sunset as part of that bill, so they started to creep down in terms of the being able to depreciate it. The demand was pulling back, right? I think people, post-COVID, right? It was more normalizing, where you weren't going to a hotel and seeing a big red piece of tape across the door, right? You were going to a hotel and you were experiencing things like cruise ships. They came back, right?
Oh, and they made sure they made it attractive to come back.
100%.
Right? Yeah.
And so there was a lot of things that happened in 2023 that said, okay, this drive for park models, this specific thing, right, kind of pulled back some. And GOC saw that, which is when I really got involved in the company. And we said, all right, the company at the time had a great backbone of employees. And to this day, we've maintained, and I tout this all over to whoever's willing to listen to me, that our leadership and our supervisor structure and our training structure is all still there, and they've all done a great job. And, while, yes, we see turnover on the kind of floor job level, for the most part, our leadership is all the same.
That core.
That's right.
Yeah.
That core group. And so I came into the company in the end of 2023. And as we were seeing, like I'd said, a decrease in tax incentives, a pullback in demand, and, there's this great facility. There's a great group of people, and we've got kind of things in place to make it happen. We said, all right, what do we do now? Right. And I love park models, and I will continue to love park models, and park models will continue to be a major part of GOC's success. But we had to do something different.
Sure.
And we said, all right,
got to pivot.
That's right. And I said, what can we do? And what does GOC do really well? And at a very basic level, we cut wood and nail it back together in different shapes.
Sure.
Right? And that's what we do, right? And we do it really well, and we do it effectively, and we do it
fast.
That's right. So we started looking at other options, and we started building the house portion of houseboats. We started building under the residential code, the modular code, which has a whole host of different challenges with it, and started expanding our book of business in terms of what our product offering was. And, from there, we've really grown as a company.
Sure.
And one of the biggest things or the biggest challenges that we had was when there was a big boom for park models, we were building 30, 40, 50 of the exact same thing, right? And just like any production line, if you're building the same thing over and over and over again, you get a lot of scale.
A lot of efficiencies.
That's right. Efficiencies, economies of scale. From purchasing to inventory management to even the skill of the people going on the line. But the market changed, right? And that pulled back some. And so we had to create a system to build more unique products. And so with the help of our leadership, we implemented an entire ERP system that does our inventory management, does our design controls, and allows us to, and if you walk through the factory today, we have 14 stations in our factory. We build 2 houses a day, nearly every day, and every one of them is different.
Yeah.
If we have 4 in a row that are the same, it's like a vacation for the guys, right?
Right.
For the folks that
they're like, oh, it's an easy
right.
day.
That's right. So, we really have evolved in terms of not just our product mix, but our way in which we build them to do it in that speed that you said, with the quality that we have, but be able to answer the market, right? And the market is saying, there's a more picky market where people are saying, I don't want blue with white siding or blue with white trim, right? I want green with dark brown trim. And, that's what the market is telling us right now. So we had to pivot and create a system to say, okay, we can still build 2 a day and answer that market demand, in which we've done. And we continue to evolve from there every day.
No, that's great color. I appreciate all that background. Help me draw the line on kind of the things that made you a good attorney that now make you a great CEO of a park model and tiny house manufacturing company.
My only pushback there would be the great attorney and good CEO thing. I try every day to be better in my life.
Sure.
But as a lawyer, and it really harkens back to the sales thing, is being a good lawyer is, the most important thing you can be with people is listen, understand their problems, and give them honest feedback.
Yeah.
Right? People would come to you all the time and say, this guy, he did me wrong and I want all this stuff. And you have to really be honest with somebody and say, I understand that you don't like it, but, that doesn't necessarily mean that you get $1 million. Right?
Yeah,
and those are the conversations you have to have.
Whether you're selling your client or you're selling your client's story to,
100%. And even, I tell my folks every day that we're all in sales. Yeah. Everybody is in sales. And I had this conversation this morning in a project out west, and I said, look, just tell the guys, everybody, there's the principal in this investment group is coming out there, and there should be no trash on the ground, right?
Yep.
It's about a sales thing. And as a lawyer, it was important, right? When you went to court, and whether you were talking to a jury or whether you were talking to a judge or whether you were talking to opposing counsel, words matter, your mannerisms matter, and all that stuff matters because you're trying to achieve an objective. And sales is the easy word to use, but it's still the same idea of trying to explain your position to somebody and have them buy into it.
It's persuasion.
That's 100% right.
Yeah,
right.
persuasion,
You want
the power
buy-in
of persuasion.
from them.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to, whether it's buy something from you or take your advice as a lawyer, or, as my legal career progressed, I became a partner and managed a group of lawyers and other professionals that they had to believe what you were saying, right? And understand why you were telling them to do something, right? And kind of one of the, to kind of follow on your answer in terms of a management, one of the most important things I ever learned as a lawyer was when I started managing other lawyers. And I would manage other lawyers, and you would get a work product from them, and it wasn't right. And my initial reaction was, I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. and I'm going to fix it. Right.
Ugh.
Right. And but that's a gut reaction, right?
Sure.
Just to say, I need to get it done.
Like it needs to get done.
And gosh darn it, I'm going to do it myself. Right. But that's not.
If I want anything done right, I'll do it myself.
That's 100% right. And you can walk back the next morning and tell that associate, I did it all night, and this is perfect. Right.
Yeah.
But that's not a growth, right?
No,
There's no
you're
growth
not winning.
there. Right. And to me, it took some reflection to say, all right, well, why wasn't it done right? Did I give good direction, right, in terms of what they were expected to do? Did I give them enough information?
Right.
Did I overestimate their abilities, right? Which it can be the case, right? Yeah. And so to me, one of the really important things was training, and I learned it. And then when I started managing managers, I would tell them the same thing. I was like, you're never going to grow and you're going to run yourself ragged if all you're ever doing is fixing other people's mistakes. You have to understand why they were made and how we can fix them in the future, right? Because if you don't train that person, they're going to continue making those same mistakes. And if you're not doing the right things in terms of delegating that information or delegating that task, you're going to continue making those same mistakes. And there's never any growth there. right? So that was probably one of the most important things as a lawyer and then as a partner.
A leader of lawyers.
Right, that's right, a leader of lawyers to say, all right, why wasn't this done right?
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this before, but I'm a big Jocko guy and the extreme ownership, which I think has its limitations, but I do abide by the idea of when a mistake was made, what could I have done?
Yeah. What can I own about
That's
this?
100%, right?
Exactly.
What could I have done to make this situation better? And I think that's one of those ones where, and I've seen it many times where a lawyer gives a young associate, hey, go write me this memo. But didn't give him direction, right? Didn't tell him what you were thinking or anything else.
No context, no parameters, no
100%.
support. Yeah. You're going to get what you get and don't get upset.
That's right. And that's
like I tell my kids.
And I've had that exact same discussion in the context of a manufacturing environment where I promoted somebody to a supervisor level and I had to pull that person aside and said, you've got to stop working on banging nails and doing it. He's like, well, it's the same discussion. It doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer that spent a bunch of money on education or whether
you're framing
you're
tiny homes.
100%.
Yeah.
You run in that same issue where you have somebody that's new as a supervisor and they've got to learn that you have to train that person, right? You just going behind them and fixing their mistakes is not going to, you're not going to elevate and they're not going to elevate.
Yeah.
And that was really an important lesson that I've learned throughout my life. And it's just interesting how you see it. I always saw it in a legal context, but how you see it in every context, right? That
these are universal themes.
100%.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Let's pivot a little bit, Matt, and let's talk about kind of what you're seeing today from your sitting in your seat in the outdoor hospitality world. Like, who is buying park models today? Where are the units moving? Where are you seeing kind of like the new ways people are using them and deploying them?
Sure. Now, I think there's an interesting hole in the market right now, and part of what I've studied and where I look for opportunities to say, where's a hole? And kind of back to what's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a problem, but
yeah.
right, same thing. Where's the challenge right now in the market? And where I see it most is that, and I think you can probably speak to this more intelligently than I can, but during COVID, there was a huge demand. There was a drive up in average daily revenue for a lot of these RV parks, and whether it was just a site or a pad or an accommodation. And so there was a lot of money put into accommodations and other things, and those deals made a lot of sense when you were looking at really high RevPAR on the per site, right? And those deals made a lot of sense, but that's pulled back, right? Yep. The reality of the world is, look, I don't mean to be a doomsday person, but things have pulled back, right?
No,
there's not nearly as much demand. The rates are coming down. The occupancy is coming down. So what I'm seeing is there's a lot of these really great parks in wonderful places that have amazing amenities that have empty spots, right? And they're not getting as much revenue per spot.
Yeah.
Right. For a regular campsite.
Sure.
And I think there's a variety of things driving that. I think that, we've both seen the data about the number of people using an RV from 0 to 1 times a year has almost doubled, I think, is the number that I saw. And that means that a lot of people bought these RVs and then they're just not using them. And I think you've heard me say this anecdotally. My parents bought an RV post-COVID, right? They used it for a year and a half. And then they got to the point where they're like, oh, we're just going to fly places and stay in hotels, right? So they've pulled back.
Their tastes have changed.
100%, right?
Evolve with the time.
Well, there's just more opportunities there, right? And so you end up with these, like I said, wonderful parks with great amenities and great locations that have opportunities, right? And they have these sites that are open. And underutilized, right? Yep. And the one place in the market, based on the market data that we've seen, is that premium accommodations, vacation rentals, park models, are one of the increasing areas where people are starting to see increase in bookings, pre-bookings, and the average daily rates are staying up there. The problem is that a lot of the operators have kind of spent all their money, right, on these great amenities, water parks, and other things, and adding a couple $1 million of cabins is a challenge, right? So that's really where we've seen kind of a hole in the market. So we're trying to drive these park owners to understand what the value of adding cabins to their portfolio can really bring.
Right. the math, not only for like the immediate revenue gain, but also the enterprise value, right? What does it bring globally to the investment? Depreciation, which is now back on the table, right? All of these things, you have to really look at it holistically.
Right. And so what we do for potential customers is we'll actually do a market report to say, all right, this is how much people are getting in that area. Right. This is the expense, because you're going to leverage it, right? You're not going to just spend $4 million, right? You'll be able to leverage it. This is your leverage expense. And this is your tax savings, which is a big one. Trying to make that case to them, say, look, this really makes a lot of sense for your park, to add these accommodations. So that's really one of our big drivers now.
Yeah,
where we're seeing a hold.
We're believers, at Blue Water. We've always been, it's about value levers for us, right? Whether we're buying or we're managing, we want to come in and find those levers for ownership and build value in the project. And for us, one of the and why the reason we invested and built GOC is because one of our biggest value levers has always been premium accommodations. And the way we look at it, philosophically, is that it just, the TAM, right, the total addressable market of people that can use a park model is just that much bigger. Not to mention the fact that I'm selling it alongside, and competing alongside a hotel room. I'm competing alongside a Airbnb, VRBO, all the while providing an experience and an environment that neither of them can really replicate, right? And so when you combine that expanded distribution, that expanded marketability, plus opening the doors for these people to see what is truly an RV resort experience. We're finding that we're converting a lot of folks, and they become like, wow, this is a great way to stay. Oh, by the way, it's 2 bedrooms, right? Versus the hotel room that I have to have adjoining rooms, and I got to make sure my kid isn't running down the hall screaming, right? All those things is just, it's a huge opportunity. We've seen a lot of being able to drive a lot of value by leveraging this type of stay. And
I think Blue Water, in addition to some other management companies, have identified the key component there is that a premium accommodation doesn't compete with a pad site, right?
No.
Somebody that has an RV that could make a choice between renting a pad site or leaving the RV at home and renting a cabin is not really the competition. The competition, like you'd said, is hotels, Airbnbs, VRBOs. And I think the management companies that are doing it well are understanding that and saying, look, let's attack those markets and say, let's compete against them. We're not going to try to compete against the pad sites. That's a separate addressable market, right? And I think that those are the folks that are really seeing the value in these premium accommodations, is to say, we've got different channels, right? It's a different buyer. It's a different person that's staying in that cabin versus a pad site.
And I love the stories where I hear someone like, oh, I don't have an RV, but my friends wanted to come. I wanted to come with my friends who do RV, right? And they find this ability to share this space together, which is fantastic.
Right, and kind of sorry, okay. Tacking on to one other place that we've seen an interesting market that we've been successful in recently is that there's a lot of transient RV parks. Right, so there was this would be kind of an independent-owned transient RV park, and it doesn't have to be that big. It can be 20, 30, 40, 80 spots, right? And it's a single person that owns it or a couple that owns it, and they've run this transient RV park, and they love it, and it's great. But they've gotten to the point where they're not interested in running up, I'll call it a hotel operation, right? Check-ins, check-outs, and other things. But they're in a great location. Right. They're in like Pensacola, Florida.
Where everybody wants to be.
Like 2 miles from the beach, right? Yeah. And so what we're seeing is some of those folks saying, look, let's just convert this transient RV park into a park model park, and it'll be somebody's vacation home. Yeah. And in this market, vacation homes are still extraordinarily expensive, for folks to buy. We live in Ocean City, Maryland. And,
the accessibility is awful.
Right. A small condo is $500,000, right?
From an ownership perspective, it's hard.
Huge, right? And so we're definitely seeing a market where there's some of these older transient parks that have good infrastructure and they're in a good location and people want a vacation there. And so they're converting from a transient RV park to a park model park. And, it has its challenges because there's seasonality associated with it. Sure. We have a park in New York where the rule says you can't stay for more than 210 days in a year. Sure. Yeah. Frankly, I don't know how you police that, but that's what the town code says. So they abide by that, and they have other ways to deal with that. But So we're definitely seeing a shift there too, where there's folks that are saying, all right, how can I exit this? And what's nice about that, and my discussion with those park owners is to say, look, you can turn this, I'll call it a hotel operation, into almost an annuity, right?
Yep.
Where you just collect seasonal rents, you have one site manager, and the site manager might just be one of the people that lives there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sure that
They want a little part-time gig.
100%.
Keep
right?
the order.
That's right. They collect the bills and collect the checks. And
the other neat part about that dynamic or that opportunity too, when we're seeing it more and more as a growing kind of popular business model, is that they can then put their units in a rental pool, right?
Sure.
And so they can then make a little of their, some of their operating costs or their ownership costs. They can make a little back on that and keep their dues down, all that kind of good stuff. So it's in the right markets. I think that play works all day long.
Yep. I think it really is driven. I want to say it's almost less amenity driven and more location driven.
Yeah.
Where people want to vacation on a regular basis.
Right.
In the Keys. Right.
Especially if you can offer a price point that they can't otherwise find.
Right.
Yeah. And yes, there might be some land rent associated with that or lot rent. But even that, when you evaluate the full criteria, it's still an attractive option.
That's right. And it opens the market for people that can't otherwise afford it.
Yeah.
Like down here at the shore, you can buy a park model, for $125,000, right? And that's your vacation home.
Sure.
It's your beach home, and it's 2 miles from the beach.
Well, and I think it's important to understand too, walk us through kind of the build of a park model at that price point, because they're getting super nice now. I mean, they're not just boxes with builder grade materials anymore. I mean, a lot of these things are coming out with some really kind of refined finishes.
Park models were born out of the RV industry, and there was a kind of a conversion from a traditional RV into a park model. And there's a lot of those characteristics that originally carried over, right, in terms of, just paneled walls and just kind of basic RV materials. That's really evolved, right? And what park models have become is the vacation home for folks like we had talked about earlier that are looking for an affordable vacation home. And what we try to do is make it feel as much as home as possible, right? That means real wood products, drywall, real appliances, quartz countertops, and I think that it's really changed. There's a lot of people would look at what we build and wouldn't really know that there's anything kind of RV related.
Right.
It has a 50 amp plug, right? And it has a water connection that works at a regular RV site, and it has a sewer connection the same way. But the inside is just like any home finishings that you would see in any other home. And, we work with, we're in the same buying consortium as a large $1 million home builder. We buy all the same materials.
Yeah.
It's the same siding, it's the same roofing, it's the same trim material. So everything that you see in our park models is the same thing you'd see in $1.5 million beach home.
Yep.
That somebody's buying a 4,000 square foot beach home. We just built it small.
Just $399.
That's right.
399 square feet.
And that's what I tell a lot of people is just because it's small and just because it's affordable doesn't mean it doesn't have to be nice.
Yeah.
Right. It can still be really nice and it can still feel like home. And the cabinetry and everything else feels like everything that you have in your regular home. And
coming from an operator perspective, right? One of the things because we also buy RVs.
Sure.
And we let people rent those, and it's a popular way for people to stay. It's definitely a little bit more of an attractive price point, but those RVs, are not necessarily built for check-in, check-out use, aggressive use like every single weekend.
Right.
And we'll find that those things will probably last us 3 years before we're running out of spare parts and needing to really just truly replace them. The park models, they'll last decades, right? Because if something breaks, there's a hole or whatever, I mean, you're just going to Home Depot and getting the pieces that you need, and it's pretty easy to fix and repair. And so the durability, right, for the price point that you're paying is fantastic from us as kind of an owner perspective.
Right. And you've heard me say this before that, a mutual friend of ours says nothing parties like a rental. And, people, you're in this business, right?
Yeah.
People that rent places sometimes
they might not take care of it the way they take care of their own home.
That's
or
right.
If they do, it's just, it's just a different vibe. But,
and so that's one of the kind of nice things about, the synergies between our two companies is that we can talk to your maintenance people. We can talk to your guest services people and say this, we used to put floating shelves on the for end tables for beds, and they're gone.
Yeah.
Right?
We're like, those just don't hold up. Right.
God knows what people are doing in the bedroom. But,
Yes.
But the end tables never seem to hold up very well. So and it's just important to kind of develop that product. And it's different, right? We have some that are retail products that are somebody's home that they're not made to rent. And then we have our nothing parties, like a rental product, right? That's a little bit more durable. One of the good examples is we've essentially done away with table and chairs to eat at. And put built-in breakfast bars because you can build it in. It's nailed to the wall, right? If it's a table, it's going to end up outside in the rain, right? It's gonna be ruined. And so, that's kind of the development over time that we've tried to make and identify back to the solving problems, right?
Sure.
What's the issue, right?
Right.
That people rent them, they're going to treat them poorly, unfortunately, in certain occasions. And how do we deal with that? Is it easy to fix? Is it going to be tough enough to handle a season? And so it's really, our product has evolved over time depending on what the ultimate use is.
Yeah, I'll tell you, that's been probably the most fun part of getting into the business is being able to really collaborate at a high level and thinking about guest experience, thinking about maintenance, thinking about housekeeping, right? Like it's just how these things actually operate on a daily basis, and having a voice at the table as to how these things have been built is kind of what's made GOC very unique, is that it's heavily influenced by the operator's perspective, the operator being us, Blue Water.
That's right. And the cleaning thing is a huge issue. And a perfect example is we built a couple models that have 3 bunks. Right? And it looks cool.
Very cool looking.
Very cool looking. Awful from a
guessing. You know who hates that?
You're cleaning people. The people have to change the sheets on the 3rd bed, right? And so those are just the things that we can try to educate our customers and say, look, yes, I get it. Looks cool.
Right.
And I'm all for it. And if you want it, I tell everybody, if you want pink with purple stripes, I'll build you whatever you want.
Yeah.
So if you want 3 bunks, it's fine. I just need to, we've gotten a lot of feedback that that's a challenging situation, especially from a turnover perspective. It slows things down. It's difficult to do that. So I think our product has refined over time to try to address those things. Yeah.
And in any scenario too, you want to find partners that are going to actually give you candid and honest guidance, right? Especially because you've built maybe thousands of park models at this point, that you've personally experienced and seen what's worked, what doesn't work, right? And this person may be buying their first 5 or their next 10, and they just don't know what right? At the end of the day.
And I think to your point on hearing back from people, one of the things that's really pushed us is an elevated experience. Right? We've been fortunate to deliver product at really high-end resorts where they're demanding really high rates, and when people are paying that, they expect a premium accommodation with natural wood finishes and other things. And so that's really driven our design department and engineering department to say, all right, how can we incorporate a lot of natural woods and other things into our products to really make it stand out as this premium accommodation? If somebody's spending $1,000 a night on a 400 square foot house,
it better be cool.
Say, wow, when they walk up. That's kind of our thing. And so, and it's actually, it's been great to hear back from our floor folks that go out to that place and understand what they're building in Georgetown, Delaware is going to this really amazing property.
Yeah, they're proud of that.
Right. Yeah. And it's important for them to understand that too, right?
Yeah. That who's the end customer, right?
100%. These are our high-end customers. They're expecting high-end experiences. And, so if the light switch is a little crooked, we need to fix that, right?
Right.
It needs to be straight because that's what people are going to expect. And I think that's one of the things that's changed over the last couple of years is we've been pushed by our customers to say, can you do this?
Right.
Is this something you can do? And, with some challenges, we've gotten through them to understand incorporating new materials and new processes to really get us there.
Sure. Yeah. So. And what's been if you had to kind of put a pin on 1 or 2 of your favorite projects that you've worked on so far, which ones have they been?
Well, Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
Is amazing, right? The idea
GOCs are in Puerto Rico.
That's right.
There we go.
The idea that we were able to work with a customer down there in a price competitive environment, in a harsh environment, right? There was a lot of engineering that went into those houses to be able to, like you said, they need to last for decades.
Right.
And that's really the logistics of getting it there was impressive enough. And I think you've heard me tell that story about
Yeah.
pirates and things on the high seas. And,
Yeah.
There's a lot of challenges getting things to Puerto Rico, and to see it come to fruition. And interestingly enough, just the last couple of weeks, he's come back. He's got new property and more
Ready to
houses
do
are going
round
down
2.
there. So we're excited about that.
What kind of property is it? Is it a kind of like short-term rental? Is it ownership?
Short-term rentals.
Okay, short-term rentals.
Yep, and
Very
it's
cool.
on a graded lot that overlooks the
Yeah.
South Ocean in Puerto Rico. It's wonderful.
It's beautiful.
And
Yeah.
you and I both,
Need to
love
go
it
check
down
it
there.
out.
So that's
Yeah.
right.
We need to go
We
to be
take
part
a
of the
visit.
install team on the next one.
That's
Maybe
right.
go catch some waves.
That's right. And I think, we've done a couple things up north that have just been amazing. It's been on that higher end level, that has pushed our team, and to see it come through and to see it be delivered and completed is really a pretty amazing spectacle to see, a group of, 54 houses or however many it is. I forget the exact number, but, it's a group of them all together in this amazing environment. It is something to see and something to be proud of. And I give a speech about once a month to the whole team, and that's one of the things that some of the folks have been up there.
Yeah.
And they can attest to it, but a lot of the folks haven't seen it, and so I'm like, ask them about it. Take pictures.
Yeah, try to connect them to
Right.
that person who has had that boots
Right.
on the ground experience.
You see it going down the line, but now it's sitting perched up on this hill, right, with these giant boulders
Yeah.
and this amazing landscaping, and that's what you're building.
Oh yeah, I
It's
saw
pretty
some
cool.
last night. Plant manager Brian, he sent me some pictures of your latest out there at Horseshoe Bend,
That's right, in Arizona.
and they look cool.
Yeah.
They look really sharp with the landscaping, and and all it's like all black units. Very very cool, very modern.
Yep, and it pushes me too, because I have to separate myself sometimes because I have a preference for what I like.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
to me, it's, if you tell me, like I said, I use pink with purple stripes. If
Yeah.
that's what you want, like it's fine, and we can talk about our experience. But that one out there, I wasn't quite sure. Right, it's in the desert in Page, Arizona, and you wanted all black, and that's what they wanted. And man, they look amazing.
Yeah,
and that
they
clay,
stand out.
in that clay background. It really looks
Yeah,
sharp
they
and
pop.
modern, and that's an exciting project.
Very cool.
That's the first step in a multi-step project, which
Yeah.
is pretty exciting.
So I want to just kind of pivot directions here a little bit. We spent last week at the RVs Move America event in Washington, D.C. I recently wrote a piece about it from my perspective. Super curious kind of what your perspective was. What were the big takeaways for you from that event?
It was really interesting. I think it reinforced my understanding of where the current market is. I think there's uncertainty, and markets don't like uncertainty, and I think everybody's kind of seeing that across the board. But it was interesting to talk to people that were coming up with creative solutions to work in this uncertain market. I think that's some of the stuff that we're doing now.
Sure.
Is to create some certainty in an uncertain market. It's really great. I've done it a couple of years now, and I had never done that before, even as a lawyer, to go talk to and lobby your government, right? And I think it's something that people should experience. If you have passion about something, and if you really want to make change, it can really happen.
Yeah.
And you and I had chatted about it when we were there, that we said, well, we just met with this legislative aide for 20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
In the lobby of the senator's office, right? But I've received multiple emails from their offices asking for additional information. And so, when we left, I think you and I both had the same thought, was like, well, did we really do anything?
Yeah.
Did we move
Did
the
we
ball?
accomplish anything?
That's right.
Yeah.
And since then, I really feel like we have.
Yeah.
We really, I've received some. We've got Senator Blunt Rochester's coming tomorrow. Her office is coming down.
Nice.
And we've got Senator Coons, his office has reached out as well. And so they're interested in what we're doing. And it's some of the stuff, frankly, unrelated to the RV industry. We're working on some affordable housing initiatives,
Sure.
and homeless initiatives, and other
Big
things.
topic these days.
That's
Yeah.
right. But fortunately for GOC, we have kind of two boxes that we check. One is we're a manufacturing company in Delaware.
Yep.
There's not that many.
Yep.
Right, especially in Southern Delaware.
Yep. It employs a lot of people.
That's right. So we check that box, and the other is affordable housing, the housing issue, and both of those are bipartisan issues. And so that's why I'm really excited about continuing those discussions, because there's current budget cycle going on, and that is really a topic of discussion, the housing issue especially.
Yep.
And I think there's going to be some funds there to really drive some of these programs forward, because it's
a crisis, right?
It is.
Affordability of housing is a crisis, and so it needs to be addressed. And this is one of the ways.
And that's one of the other things that I spend a lot of my time on, is the affordable housing issue. And again, it's outside of park models. It's built to a different code, and I don't think we can go down that rabbit hole, but it has a whole host of other challenges associated with it.
Yeah.
And I spent probably the first 6 months just kind of understanding the park model business. And since then, I've really spent a lot of time on the affordable housing issue that we have. And I don't care whether it's in Georgetown, Delaware, or Ocean City, Maryland, or Boise, Idaho. You can ask anybody, is there a housing issue? And they're all going to say yes.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is satisfied with the current housing situation for a lot of folks. And so, I've attacked it from a lot of different angles with a lot of different people. And recently, in the last, I'll say 3 to 4 months, we've kind of created this coalition where I think we've got the right people at the table. We've got the right people with loud voices at the table, and that are motivated to solve this issue. And we're starting to see cracks in the dam. Right?
That's
we're starting
awesome.
to see some real movement. And I think I've told you this, that the little town of Georgetown, Delaware, right, is where we are. Right, we're within the town limits, our little factory, right, and the town decided they needed to add more housing. So they created this cottage zoning, right? Cottage community zoning. And it allowed for smaller footprint. It allowed for single owner and a lot of other things. And I went to the planning commission and testified, and there was other folks there testifying, and the people sponsoring it said, we've got 2 great examples. One of them is in Spokane, Washington, and one of them is in Aurora, Colorado.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
I said, well, great. So that's our 2 examples are all the way on the West Coast, and that's all we've got to show for it. And so my comment was, look, Georgetown, Delaware, for being a small town in Sussex County, Delaware, can really be a thought leader.
Yeah.
And say, look, we're going to do this. And, it's a 5-person town council in the face of really loud and vigorous opposition, adopted the zoning ordinance that's going to allow this cottage community zoning.
Yeah.
And, I really applauded them in their efforts to do that, because they basically said it was 4-1. One person voted against it, but the 4 people said, we've got to do something.
Right.
It might not be right, and it might fail, but we're going to try.
Nothing's not a good option.
That's right. We're not just going to sit here and talk about it more and more and more. And since then, we've got the land donated by one of a philanthropist in town, which is great. And we're moving forward with that process. Where we're actually going to bring this. It's 124 units to fruition. And it's moving forward, and
super exciting.
It's really exciting. And we're working on another project in Lincoln, Delaware, another project in North Carolina, where we're really starting to see movement where the local jurisdictions are saying, look, we can't just zone for 2,500 square foot single family homes,
right?
Because they're just too expensive.
Yep.
I don't care what you do. A 2,500 square foot home is going to cost a certain amount of money, just given the material cost putting into it. So we're starting to see movement, in these various jurisdictions to say, look, let's talk about it. Let's think differently. And the ones that are willing to be creative and use some political capital and say, all right, we're going to take a stand here and we're going to try it, right?
Yeah.
Just like Georgetown did. Yep. We're going to give it a shot. And again, I 100% believe that it's going to be successful, but they basically said, look, we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And that's what we're starting to see. And it really is a local issue. It really is a local zoning issue. And like you said, you use the word crisis, and you can talk to almost anybody, and they're going to say it's a housing crisis. It's a housing crisis. But there's a lot of people staring down a crisis, moving really slow.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Nobody knows.
I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult, and it's not like it's a challenge that you're going to fix tomorrow.
No.
Right. It's not. It's a multifaceted challenge that's going to take a lot of people and a lot of different ideas to actually fix that problem.
Well, and people making bold decisions, right?
That's right.
Which is what you're seeing there in Georgetown, which is cool.
And there's not a panacea, right? There's not like one thing that's going to solve all these issues, right? ADUs, accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
It's great. People can start to add them. It adds a little bit of housing stock. that's not going to solve,
Correct,
30,000 housing units in Delaware and 120 in Maryland, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get there. But if you keep trying to dig into that and say, all right, we can try to attack it in a bunch of different ways, I think we can actually start to make some progress there.
No.
I think we finally are. I think we're really starting to see some cracks in the dam where it's just gotten to that, I'll call it crisis plus level, I guess.
Sure.
Where people are
Crisis plus.
That's right. Where they're like, oh my gosh,
it's like
really,
Paramount Plus, HBO Plus,
that's
Crisis
right.
Plus.
That's right. You got to pay a subscription for it.
Subscription for this crisis. So you mentioned something pretty near and dear to my heart, which is obviously advocacy. And obviously I'm super involved on the Ojai side. You are also involved with RVIA. You're on a lawyers committee. Can you talk a little bit about kind of that and kind of what you've gotten out of it, what you feel it accomplishes, obviously without telling everybody how all the sausage is made.
That's right. It probably doesn't come as a great shock, but there's my eyes were open to something I didn't realize, that there was a lot of targeting of the RV manufacturers from a lemon law perspective, right? And I didn't fully understand that. There's a lot of the lawyers committee is associated with that. But more importantly, I think that it's they're hand in glove with the specs committee, right, that's doing the specifications for all these things, because the manufacturers are the ones who are going to have to abide by all these specifications, and the lawyers are going to be the ones that are in trouble if they weren't communicating that. So I think that's where we've kind of seen some of that kind of broad. I guess that's where I've seen the lawyers committee be so helpful. But it's that committee is great. There is really smart, thoughtful people on that committee that are interested in understanding what your challenges are and willing to work. And I think it's exactly what RVA is for, is that they're willing to work together to say, all right, how can we address these? And, one of them is AI, and
I was going to get there eventually.
Yeah,
I love my AI.
And from a legal perspective, the AI situation is a whole different animal, right? People are getting caught, using AI, and it's a wonderful tool, and I use it almost every day. I would probably say every day in my business. But as a lawyer, when you're filing things at the court, it's really interesting. We actually, the last meeting we talked about, as a lawyer, when you sign something that's filed with the court, what attaches to that is an ethical obligation that you've investigated everything. It's filed in good faith and all these other things.
Sure.
They've actually, some courts, Pennsylvania in particular, has added a separate certification that says that you didn't use AI in the creation of this document.
Oh, wow. Not even saying that you verified what it produced, just that you didn't use it at all.
And it was actually one of the discussions we had, because to me, if you Google something today, there's AI, right?
Yeah, does that count?
To think that there's not AI at any level involved, I would be hard pressed, I think, as a lawyer to sign that saying, I had no AI involvement at all. But it's definitely something creeping through the legal system, and the folks on the committee always like to give me a hard time because, like you had said, I'm a reformed lawyer.
Yeah.
So
Well, I appreciate your efforts to support the RVIA.
Trying to. It's a good group. I think it's a good group that works well together. The Park Model Committee is a smaller committee. The park models are a very small piece of the whole RV industry,
RV world,
and it's not that big of a group of people, but I think that there's a really good group of folks together that are willing to drive it. And that was actually, I'm on that committee as well, that we're talking about, all right, how can the broader RV industry help the Park Model Committee, right, and help the park model industry and drive that forward. And I think that there was a lot of good kind of camaraderie there between, while we're competitors, I don't think there's any bad blood there.
I agree. And I want to give a shout out to Tim Gage over there at Cavco, because he's just been, such a mentor for me and for us as we've kind of been going through this process. Him and the entire team over there at Cavco have welcomed us into this industry, not as competitors, but as colleagues. And it's been a wonderful way to be. We've toured each other's factories, learned, shared. And that's the way it should be. And that's the way I like to compete, at least, right? High tide raises all ships.
And I stole his idea. He had one of those self-serve cafeterias where you could pull things out of the fridge and everything. And we've since stole that idea.
Yeah, so put it in our cafeteria.
Now,
no, it's great.
And I'm
sure the team loves it.
It is great.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's fantastic. So you mentioned it, so it wasn't me
Sure.
that brought it up. You brought it up,
That's
but
fine.
I always love learning
slipped me a
about.
note.
Yeah,
Said please mention this.
please mention AI.
Right. Sure.
Always love learning how people are using it. I've been preaching it to you, and
Sure.
you've become one of my disciples of AI here in the Blue Water.
right.
You Spear.
Sure.
But tell me about how kind of you guys have been leveraging it at GOC and ways you kind of have found efficiencies and opportunities with it.
I think one of the easiest angles is putting together a really professionally done presentation and using a design studio to do that. And so that whether it's a PowerPoint that you're giving or whether it's something that you're mailing somebody, it looks and feels like your stuff, right?
Yeah.
It looks like your website.
Yep.
It's the same fonts. It's the same
consistency.
colors. That's right.
Yep.
And it doesn't take hours and hours and hours, right?
Yeah.
You can feed in, I have my written summary that I want, and it feeds in my images and everything else. And that's just a huge tool. And it really is powerful to be able to say, all right, let's just keep that branding together, because you and I have talked about this before, that one of the challenges GOC had was we were the new kid on the block, right? There was a couple big players and they had great brand recognition. We didn't.
Yeah.
And part of gaining brand recognition is repeating, right? That you've got to keep
consistency
and repetition. And part of that is that everything that you're sending somebody has that same look and feel. And I think that's been a great tool. Mm-hmm. But more granular, one thing that we've done recently is we do a pricing exercise, right? And one of the things that GOC is really good at is we can take somebody's, I'll call it a custom, right, order, right, and convert that from somebody drew something on a piece of paper to an engineered drawing, to a print pack to going on the floor in a matter of days, right? We just have the in-house staff and the flexibility to do that. And I tell everybody that we're small enough to be nimble, but big enough to build at scale, right? So we can answer the mail.
In between.
That's right. And so we can answer the mail for a lot of those folks. The challenge there is, how do you price that? Right. And so recently, I spent the last weekend actually messing around with different tools to say, all right, let's input kind of our drawing and our other stuff. Can we input that into our prior bombs, compare them against the other ones, and say, all right, let's come up with a price.
And a bomb for everybody is a bill of materials.
That's right. So. Yep. So, and that's what drives a lot of our pricing, right?
Yep.
And so I've gotten closer. So I've gotten within about, I would say about 10 to 15% of what somebody sitting and spending 2 days doing a bomb does. And so I'm not there yet, but what's nice about AI and what a lot of people I don't think leverage well enough is that it's iterative, right?
Yep.
That it continues to learn, so that I'm at 10 to 15%, but I'm going to tell it where it's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
The next thing it'll be
and then
2
the
to 3.
The next time it's 2 to 3, and it keeps driving that back to where, if I can get under 5%, I feel that's a margin of error I can deal with, especially taking that load off somebody spending days doing that. And that's just one concrete example where, being fast and being nimble and being able to turn something around and say, yes, we can sell it to you for this X dollars.
Yeah.
Right? I can do that quickly. And AI has been great. It uses our ERP system to do that. It uses our past bombs to do that. And I think we're getting closer. And again,
I heard a cool scenario too where one of your team members used it to create different color variations for a client, and so they can show them the same unit in infinite level of options.
I think that is a perfect illustration of where AI is going to change. I hate to say get rid of jobs, but it's the reality of it, right? Jobs are going to change, and it's the buggy whip thing, right? The people that used to make buggy whips, they don't make them anymore because the world has changed. Right?
You don't have a buggy whip?
That's right. I don't. Well, the world has really changed, and this was a perfect example. We had demoed a program to upload and create a design studio.
Yeah.
Right, where people could pick and choose on this cabinet, this thing, and boom, 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 and
an expensive piece of software.
That's right, and it was expensive. There was a setup cost, and there was a monthly cost, and every time you want to make a change, there was changes. And one of our folks there, she sent an email and said, "Check this out."
Yeah.
And she basically uploaded all of our counter combinations, all of our cabinet combinations, and uploaded it and created a skill to drive that and print it out. And now it's all uploaded on our website. So you can say, I want, blue cabinets with a gray counter and brass,
It's wild.
It's all right there.
Yeah.
And that was done all through a fairly basic AI tool. And, I know have taken a lot more steps than I have, and I'm trying to catch up. But, once you start to continue that, it's going to even get better and better and better. And really, it's, everybody says everything changes the world, but, it just changes the way that
shifting it for sure in a major way.
And I think on a more global scale, and you and I have talked about this before, I think one of the things that AI does as a leader of a company and trying to think of creative ways to do things, I spent, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate, but I spent a lot of Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah. Well, the weather wasn't very good.
The weather was not good. The weather was not good. So I spent a lot of Memorial Day weekend just kind of hashing out new ideas,
right,
trying this thing out.
Experimenting.
That's right. And I feel like that gives you a platform to say, hey, we've got this idea, like this is what I'm thinking, boom, 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 and it tells you, where it's strong, where it's weak, and you can try to work through that to really hone your ideas. And I think it allows you to be really creative, like something dumb, right?
Yeah.
Where you just throw it out there and say, does this have any meat on the bone, or is it just a silly idea?
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the more global areas where I think it's super powerful.
Yep.
Where you could just, like I said, be kind of silly is not the right word, but be just creative and say,
There's zero cost to experimenting.
That's right.
Right. And experimenting with things that you never could before. So like, why not?
Yep.
Right. Not to mention the fact that if you don't know how to do it, you can ask it and it'll show you how to do it, or like help you walk through the process. So it's just the meta iterative nature of it is just wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, and
cool.
I continue to evolve every day, just like it does, and trying to learn and figure out different ways. And again, that's one of the other areas where I said, how can you help me?
Yeah.
Right. Ask it. Like, how do you help me do this? Right. We've got this one challenge in our factory. Like, how can you? What are your thoughts in terms?
Yeah.
Of
how can you be a solution for this?
That's right.
And that's the fun part, right? I think that's the thing I always try to encourage people that are on the fence about using it or trying it. I'm like, again, there's no harm, no foul situation, right? Yeah. It's just like, as long as the only risk I always warn people is like, understand your data, make sure you keep the right data confidential and private. But outside of that, like, you really can't break too much, especially in the early days.
That's right.
With learning how to use it. So just go throw yourself into it. So before we move into some other topics, is there anything park model related that we need to talk about, Matt?
I don't think so.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good.
We beat that up pretty good. All right. Perfect. So Matt,
I thought he was going to wrap it up.
No, not at all. No, we're not. We've only begun to pod.
All right.
One of the things that I always love to learn about, right, and I've grown a tremendous respect for you and your abilities and background, and so love to learn who made you, right? And so what would you, if you had to say kind of people that were major influences for you in forming your own kind of thought system and belief system, who were those people that really kind of helped form that for you?
Man, that's a tough one.
Besides your brother, who turned you into the best salesman ever.
That's right. He did. He is, to this day, he's still a wonderful salesman. But, obviously my parents is the easy answer, right?
Sure.
Like my folks were, my dad worked for the government. My mom was a Catholic school teacher. We didn't grow up with much. I was a third kid. I went off to kindergarten when I was 4. I was a latchkey kid for a lot of that. And, I hate to sound like that old guy that was like, oh, things were different in the 80s. When
we're getting there, buddy. I hate to be the one to tell you, but we are getting to be the old guys.
Yeah, I woke up this morning and everything hurt. So it was okay. But I guess I try to, it's hard to pinpoint because I try to take little pieces from everything, right? And from people, and maybe this is good or bad, but I don't lean on one person, right? I don't think any one person has all the answers. And so I try to understand people and what they're telling you and internalize kind of little pieces and try to create what drives me. And I think that that's really one of the biggest things is like, all right, how can I let me take this little nugget of information. Yeah. It's just like a self-help book or something else. Like you're not going to do everything that's in it.
No, but you're going to get some nuggets from it.
That's right. That's right. And you've introduced me to a book that I love. Yeah. And, so I take those pieces and try to build on those over time. And, I guess it's why I'm not devout in any certain thing at this point, because I try to challenge what people are telling me. And, if I can't overcome it, then I'm like, okay, this is good, and we should really continue to do that. Right. So, that's kind of what drives me.
Stress test it.
That's
and
right.
If it sticks, then like, all right, that's in. We're going to put it in the vault.
And it's everything from, one of my sales manager guys when I was a 22-year-old kid in Miami,
right.
That taught me how to push hard and get through some of the challenges in life, to some of the, partners that were my mentors over time. And, I think I've learned, interestingly, from, I want to say other people's mistakes, if that sounds right.
Oh, yeah.
Like, there's definitely been people in my life that I respected a lot, and they've been very honest and said, if I'd have done something differently, I wouldn't have done it this way.
Yeah.
And I think that's actually a really interesting thing, because a lot of people want to tell you how to do something, but listening to people say, I did this and it was a mistake, and you should try not to do that. And, one of those important things was, I worked at a large law firm that people worked long hours, and, as part of what drove me down here was, losing that connection to your family and your life. And I'm fortunate that I'm going to drive my 16-year-old back to Georgetown tonight.
Right.
for lacrosse practice, and that's what we do. But it's just those
good
times,
windshield time together.
That's right. And we don't have that much time, right, with our kids.
Sure.
We got one that's 16. He's going to go off to college in a couple of years. And
so,
I remember this one partner looking at me, and it was 3 a.m, and he looked up at me in his office and he said, "I'm 67 years old. Why the hell am I still doing this?" And, I just
left a mark.
Right. No, I just remember thinking, like, I don't think I want that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the right thing I want to do.
You wanted to have better balance.
So I said, back to your kind of question, there's a lot of people over my life. My brother obviously was a really important driver. And it's funny because he's 7 years older than me. Yeah. And people are like, "Oh, did you ever fight with your brother?" I was like, no, he would like stuff me in a mayonnaise jar. He was 7 years older than me, right?
There wasn't a fight to be had.
But he's still one of my best friends, and and I do that. And I do have a best friend. It's a guy I met the first day of law school. Yeah. And I talk to him every morning, and he's one of the best humans I know in my life. And he's one of the guys that I can be totally honest with. Yeah. And no judgment. And he's an important person in my life as well.
Oh, it's good to have those people.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So, I mean, I thought I was your best friend, but it's fine.
No problem. Sorry, man.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up, buddy.
Okay.
This was fantastic, but I have a brain teaser left from a previous guest that I'd love for you. Not a brain teaser, but kind of a something to think about. What's something you believed strongly 10 years ago that you've since completely changed your mind about?
What's something I believed 10 years ago? I believe strongly. I would say market forces, right?
Market forces.
So I believe I was a big, the Adam Smith, hand driving everything guy, and that people are driven by their motivations, and I think that's very true. But I think what I've learned over time is that there's a lot of other factors that drive those motivations as well, and there's people directing that hand, and not just market forces, and understanding that. And I see that a lot in, frankly, the tax code.
Yeah,
I think the tax code and getting really to understand what's in there and what the original intent was, to try to drive action from certain people.
Yep, drive behavior,
really, well, it perverts the market forces. I think it skews a lot of those.
That's an interesting way. Right. That's an interesting take. Yeah.
But I was always that like Adam Smith guy. Like it's going to be everybody's driven by their motivations. That's going to drive them. But in our current environment, I think there's a lot of people that want to distort that market world. Right. I think over as an umbrella, it still holds. Yeah. But I think on a granular level, it there's a lot of...
It's not the whole truth.
That's right. That's right. And I think that when people try to simplify that, it doesn't hold up. Yeah. Right. None of that stuff, if you say it applies to everything. It just doesn't hold up. And I did, I was a believer in, and that whole idea of, the market is going to kind of produce the right results. And I've really subsequently changed a lot of my tune to think, I think there's other factors as well besides just, people's motivations. I think there's other reasons, societal change and other good, that are worth doing that are not necessarily market driven.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that approach. That's a cool thought. Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time today.
I got a brain teaser for you.
You got one for me?
No, I don't. I'll think up something.
Bring it. I love to think on my feet. But thank you so much for being here. Appreciate the time. Appreciate the perspective on park models, the market as a whole. Love being in this partnership with you, with Blue Water and GOC, and look forward to many more great things to come.
I appreciate it, Raf.
Take care, buddy. Thank you.
Thanks, bud.